As therapists, we are trained to assess personality through structured interviews, sometimes extensive testing, even though the Rorschach is part of my background. Those are not convenient. And what if there was a tool that could bypass all of this work and offer you and your clients deep, meaningful insight into their inner world, their motivations, their blind spots, their growth opportunities that was easy for us to use, that made sense to clients, and also has some clinical validity behind it? Well, stay with me because that's what we're talking about on today's episode of Love, Happiness, and Success for Therapists. I am Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and you're here because you're a therapist who is interested in growing, not just professionally, but personally. And that's what this show is all about. And I couldn't be more excited because today I'm joined by Ian Morgan Cron, bestselling author of a number of books, including The Road Back to You. And Ian is also the mastermind behind one of the most valid and reliable, wait for it, Enneagram personality assessment instruments on the market. And we need to talk about this. I think many therapists, perhaps even you, have put Enneagrams in this box that is like pop psychology, not something that would be useful or appropriate for the work that you're doing. And in recent years, there is a lot of emerging evidence to say otherwise. So open up your mind and get ready for a conversation that is going to change your understanding. New versions of the Enneagram test are research-backed, they are clinically useful, and they can help you do fantastic work with your clients. So welcome, Ian, and I am so just thrilled to talk to you about your book, your new Enneagram assessment, and how therapists like me and our listeners here and like you can use this to help our clients move forward more quickly than they might be able to otherwise.
Lisa, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here and to share what I know.
Yeah, which is an awful lot. I mean, you are an authority on this topic. And so if we can, please, let's just start at the beginning for, the 4 or 5 listeners in our collective here right now with us who are not yet familiar with the concept of Enneagrams, the 9 broad categories of personality that they seek to illuminate. Give us a super quick rundown of what this is.
Sure. So the Enneagram is a personality typing system that teaches that there are 9 basic personality styles in the world. The beautiful thing that the Enneagram does is it doesn't just describe types, doesn't describe just what they do, but why they do it. Motivations, fears, and unconscious drives, right? Contrary to what people think, it is not astrology. It is not a... It is, I've heard it all, right? It is when treated, when taught and utilized correctly, it's a really helpful instrument for getting what I would call a low definition picture of the patterns, the predictable habitual patterns of acting, thinking, and feeling of 9 different kinds of personalities, right? And to be clear about this, when we talk about personality, right? It sounds reductive to say 9, right? Like, really, Ian? 9 personality styles. Okay, well.
Yeah. No, there's, I think, a basis for that 9. We could talk more about that, but.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the way that each of those 9 types expresses itself is very unique and individual, right? Yeah. So, it's almost like I always tell people, it's like the color red, right? Like if you've ever gone to Home Depot to get yourself, like I remember my wife saying to me once, we're going to go, I need to get cranberry red for the dining room. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going to take 20 minutes, right? Like, okay, I'll do it. Do you know how many variations there are on the color red?
Oh yeah, I've had that mind freeze standing in front of all the
Yes.
paint chips. Like, what
Yes.
do I do?
Yes. There are an infinite number of hues and contrasts and depths of color. There's rose, there's cranberry, there's, I mean, it's enough to make you want to punch Ralph Lauren in the face. Like, how many reds can there possibly be? Right? Well, in the same way, I look at, you can see the analogy here, right? Like, all right, you're an Enneagram 8. What shade? There's an infinite number of reds and 8s on the continuum, but they do share one thing in common. They're all red. See, so it doesn't in any way reduce people to 9 simple personality styles. Within it, there's a very infinitely wide range of expressions.
Absolutely. That personality exists on a spectrum. And this is honestly part of, I think, what caught my attention related to the Enneagram theory is because with my training and background, and yours too, and our listeners, well, and I don't know, I personally was trained on the DSM-4 originally, and then we translated over into the 5, right?
Yeah.
And, in this, you flip open the section on personality disorders, and there are these very distinct pathological manifestations of personality. And wait for it, there are 9 of them. And then I think with the evolution of the DSM-5, the way of understanding is that these personalities exist on a spectrum. It is not yes, you have it, or no, that you don't. And of course, as therapists, we're really trained on picking up on the pathology. So narcissistic personality disorder is a pathological iteration of a personality style that the Enneagrams say also has healthy aspects. And so, thinking about this and that corollary of narcissistic personality style in a very healthy, beautiful way is an achievement orientation that might be manifested by an Enneagram 3, right? And so that's what got me starting to think about, maybe there's something here that is almost the reflection, the positive aspect, a more useful application in some ways of what we understand in terms of psychopathology. So that's where this started for me.
So to be clear, the Enneagram is useful with what I call garden variety neurotics. All right. So just basic garden variety neurotics. Now, if you are out on the tails and exhibiting symptomatology of disorder or pathology, it's not nearly as useful. That said, what you just said is very interesting, right? I don't often talk about this because just because of the context in which I'm normally teaching, right? Which is,
are you going to tell me a secret?
Corporations. Well, maybe. But if you were to take those 9 types to their extremes, their pathological extremes, here's how it would look. 1's obsessive compulsive personality disorder. 2's codependency, possibly a dependent personality disorder, or more likely a histrionic personality disorder. 3's narcissistic personality disorder. 4's borderline personality disorder. 5's, we used to call it schizotypal, but now we call it, remind me quickly, my brain just froze up.
I have my DSM over there on the bookshelf. I can go get it if we need to reference it. No, but that schizoid presentation, that
schizoid,
flat, internal, right?
Yes. 6 would be paranoid personality disorder. 7 often is also narcissistic personality disorder. 8's oppositional, and 9's dependent personality disorder. So if you took all those out to their extremes, it's just very interesting that there's a parallel between the DSM and what the Enneagram teaches, right? Now, but when you're treating those people, I just don't use the Enneagram because it's
and I'm right. Yeah,
it's a whole different.
It's a whole
different. Yeah, just to be clear.
We're not saying that we're wanting to clinical diagnosis of somebody with probably a personality disorder, antisocial. I've always thought of antisocial as being like an 8 kind of thing.
Yeah, it used to be. Didn't we used to call that oppositional?
I think in kids it's oppositional defiant, and then without intervention
Yeah,
it
okay.
blooms into
Thank
its
you.
full
Thank you to that.
expression.
That's right.
But
Thank
I
you.
think so we're not talking about like a clinical diagnostic tool. That would not be appropriate.
Right.
There are other things that we use for that. However, what we're talking about and how I have been using the Enneagram with clients, particularly coaching clients, relational clients, people coming into therapy, to figure themselves out and get different outcomes in their lives, is really around to take a look at what is the basic flavor that you are in terms of personality. And then how do we use that? Because with the spectrum concept of personality, there are healthy manifestations of personality that are gorgeous. And the Enneagram also helps us get some visibility into what it looks like when people are not in that healthy of a place, not clinically significant personality disorders, but like in that middle, like not optimal.
Yes.
And what I think has been just phenomenal is that it's a tool that is very useful in sessions to be able to talk with a client around, does this fit for you? And where on this spectrum of health do you believe yourself to be, so that they can start to get insight into, yeah, probably in the middle, and also get some visibility into. So I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm a licensed psychologist, but in my heart of heart, I'm an MFT. I do a lot of couples counseling. And so to have somebody be able to say in a relationship, oh, I can see how the darker side of my personality is impacting you as my partner. And I need to work on that, because sometimes, especially in couples counseling, people can get very, defensive, but to have this, it's like a more neutral way of like getting insight. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Sorry. I'm just like,
no, I love this because
I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Now, I don't do marriage and family therapy, but I do a lot of work on corporate teams.
Amazing.
And they do spend 8 to 10 hours a day together. But I have done it with some couples, just not as many as you have. Now, I've seen it do is it depersonalizes the issues. It's no longer personal, right? And it gives you a shared vernacular with which you can begin to discuss your interior world with another person. You can begin to share with another person how the ways they show up land on them, right? On another person.
Exactly.
And like I say, I'm actually, a lot of people get turned on to the Enneagram and they just run it to the bank. I mean, they're just so excited because actually it is uncannily accurate in many ways. And it really people get so excited because it's like, finally, someone is helping me articulate what has been, finally, someone is saying clearly what I have always known vaguely about myself. And it's like such an eye opener. And I'm like, okay, you can be excited off the charts for 6 months, but after that, I'm going to talk you off the ledge. It is a useful instrument. It's not perfect, right? It's just super useful. It's very practical. It's only one instrument of many. It's one data point I use as a therapist. It's not everything I use as a therapist. I still draw on my knowledge of CBT, all my knowledge of internal family systems, of attachment theory, on and on and on. I got a toolkit, and it's one tool in it, but it is one I go back to repeatedly because it's so accessible and so actionable for people. It's like I can leave the office today with something that I know about myself or about my partner, and something I can do to begin the journey of change. That will bring
It's
about
actionable.
more health. Very actionable. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, just to support all of this, I think that part of the reason that some psychologists like myself have had some resistance to this idea, I think that it has taken on pop psychology intonations. You have a lot of different like online assessments that people get excited about that do not have like any psychometrics behind them, reliability, validity, like what is the basis for people making these claims? And I think psychologists like me can get a little like, all right, show me the details, and they don't exist. And what we have also seen more recently, particularly with the Enneagram, is that it is picking up steam, and I think starting to generate more respect and appreciation. Even so, a couple of months ago, I had the great privilege of interviewing Dr. Dan Siegel on this program. As so we all know and love Dr. Dan, whole brainchild, brainstorm. I mean, so many things, really like a thought leader, particularly around attachment and how to use this. And it was so fascinating to me because he shared that he and a team of researchers had put 6 years into developing a different way of understanding the intersection between personality and attachment styles and also life experience in order to develop this complete concept of like human functioning, that they're really creating a totally different model for how to heal attachment by using personality. Fascinating conversation. You guys can scroll back in my feed if you want to check that out. But he has a book that he wrote for clinicians specifically, and it is called, oh my goodness, it is
Personality
called
and Wholeness in Therapy.
Personality and Wholeness in Therapy.
Yeah.
And you know, just like speaking with him and thinking, if Dan Siegel and a team of researchers are going here, like there is something for us. And that's why I was so excited, Ian, when I heard about your work on how to strengthen the assessment process, because I think previously the instruments that we've had that have attempted to uncover, air quote, Enneagram traits or styles have not had like this rigorous test construction process that is really needed. And if you could even just speak broadly, and I know that you worked with other psychologists and people who had real expertise in the psychometrics, and you're more the visionary mastermind behind it, but can you just tell us a little bit about some of the science and the process that went into making sure that your assessment tool is actually trustworthy in a way that maybe some others haven't been?
Yes. By the way, just so people know, that Dan Siegel book, it really is all about interpersonal biology, neurobiology, and the Enneagram of personality, applying the two, integrating the two. It's really fascinating that he's doing this work.
Right.
Yeah, so I realized, I'm a trained therapist. I have a deep respect for psychometrics. I'm a little nerdy about them, but I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychometrician, but I recognize that it's important for us to have instruments that are reliable and valid, that will help us to identify what's happening dynamically with our clients, and that those instruments need to be trustworthy. Now, there are a number of tests that are pretty decent, and they have been analyzed and tested and all that stuff, and that information is widely available. But I was really not satisfied with just that. I was like, you know what? Because I have a pretty big audience and they trust me, it's like I got to find a way to do this that's legit. So I spent a considerable amount of resources because it's not inexpensive to have a test constructed.
Sure.
Working with a research psychologist over the course of 2 years, having a reliable and valid instrument produced that can be used in a clinical setting or just by someone who wants to know their Enneagram type, right? When a person takes this instrument, they not only discover their type, but it's about a 22 to 25 page report, depending on the type.
I've taken it. It's comprehensive.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive report, and it's very, very useful. And I think, there's an old expression, right? Beware of contempt prior to investigation.
Yeah.
And that's from a British poet, with one I can't remember. But I think a lot of times it's very easy to dismiss something prior to investigation.
Mhm.
And I just encourage therapists and psychologists who have any doubts or, you know, um, are skeptical to the point that they're not interested. Have you done the investigation work? Have you yourself used this instrument? Have you really researched it? And if not, then I suggest that maybe that would be a really wise track to go
Yeah.
down before just saying, "Oh, that's astrology," which is not. I mean, that is so
Right.
far from the truth that it makes me giggle a little bit
I know.
whenever I hear it. Um,
Well, and on that note, just to insert for a moment, so the psychologist that you worked with on this development, who spearheaded it, Dr. Todd Hall, he has published at least one research paper, the Enneagram, a systemic review of the literature. Is that the
mhm,
working title? I'm going to
yeah,
find that for you guys listening, and I will be sure to include that in the show notes for this episode, as well as, if you'd like to pass on any other research that you're familiar with, or that the psychologist that helped you develop this instrument, kind of made some of their decision making processes around, I would be happy to include it, because I think you're right. Conscientious therapists who take their responsibilities to their clients very seriously, they really do. Like, what is in the ingredients of this thing that not just I'm purchasing, but advising my clients to take, and we do need to have access to that information. So I'll be sure to include those details in the notes.
great. That's a
Yeah.
good plan.
Yeah. Well, and but I think, to your point too, to have some kind of personal experience with this can be really helpful. I think for all of us, especially if we're going to be advocating for our clients to take assessments, like to have that experience ourselves. And I'll just tell you that I personally, Ian, had the most interesting thing happen. So, I had in the past, because I had appreciated the Enneagram, utilized it, and this isn't to, you know, throw shade on anything, but there, the Rio, is it the Rio Hudson, the Ready iteration of the Enneagram test?
Riso Hudson.
Riso Hudson. Thank you so much. It's available online, very accessible. It's affordable. It's like $12 to take. And so, that would often be the one that I might advise, and the one that I took myself. But a few months ago, I was actually asked to take your version, Ian, because I am part of a leadership and like business coaching program. A quick plug for Scaling Leader, led by Courtney Durandi, and they're very intentional about helping business leaders understand their personality, their strengths, their working styles, so they can understand how that impacts their team, and how, individual contributors impact the system because of their different personalities and working styles. So anyway, it's fantastic. But when they asked me to take your updated assessment, Ian, I discovered that I had been mistyped all along. I had been understanding myself to have an achievement orientation, that some aspects of that fit for me, others of it though didn't, in terms of like image consciousness. I don't
Hmm.
care quite that much. But turns out I am actually a type 7. And I hadn't
Yeah.
realized that. And it made so much more sense for me. But also, it helped me understand, like, what some of my problems were in a more clear way that I hadn't
Yes.
had visibility into. Like, oh, this is why the people that I work with can get annoyed with me. I understand now.
Sure.
And I think it's because your assessment went into a different aspects of like personal functioning, including like personal life type questions,
Hmm.
in a way that others hadn't. And I was curious to know if that was part of the intentionality, beside, like, what did you do to help make sure that your instrument was really different, and maybe picking up on some different things that other more basic or iterations that might not have had quite the research backing. What what is it that is making your test more sensitive? I guess is what I'm trying to ask. What do you think?
Yeah, and this is where I wish Todd Hall was on the call
Ah,
because, so much of what I've learned, and again, I'm not an expert in psychometrics, but I was so amazed to learn little things along the way, like
hmm.
just the amount of effort that went into scrubbing questions
Yeah.
to make sure that the test was consistent and reliable.
Hmm.
Uh, obviously using sample pools and testing the test to make
Yeah.
sure that the test was reliable. And
Right.
to be clear, that every psychological instrument has margins of error.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as a perfect test, right? Which is why I also tell people, listen, um, your results, because in part because these are self-report tests, right? That if you um, take a test, you should sit with somebody who's very familiar with the Enneagram, who's trained in the system to
Hmm.
verify them, right? Like make it a two-step process. Like if you have any concerns, now you may take a test and have the result come back and it is sounds so much like you don't have any doubts, and that's fine.
Hmm.
But if you have doubts, you sit with somebody and you go through the test with them because there may have been factors that influenced a mistyping, right? Like created a mistype. That's
Yeah.
normal. That's not
Hmm.
abnormal, right?
Hmm.
And uh, so I think what I did was, again, I was the resources behind the construction of the test, and also the person who was inspired to have a more reliable instrument on the market that was trustworthy. And ultimately, what are we doing here? What we're doing is trying to present a model that gives people a way of identifying and expressing these patterns in their lives that are clear and predictable and repeating,
Hmm.
right? Um, and it opens up the aperture in a clinical setting for a much richer conversation, even beyond the Enneagram. The Enneagram may
Yeah.
be the starting point of a much richer conversation. And
Hmm.
so, just on that basis alone, I find it terrifically useful. I've had many conversations that started with the Enneagram and then eventually blossomed or mushroomed out into other insights and areas of work that had to be done in with somebody, and for which then I was very grateful to that model because
Hmm.
of what it eventually led to,
Hmm.
and what it evoked and what it brought up for people. And um, so I think starting with a test like the Typology Institute Enneagram Assessment, our assessment, um, and then in the hands of a skillful clinician, um, who then can pay attention very closely to what's happening with their client in the moment through the lens of the Enneagram. You can, you know, like one thing I tell clients, clinicians all the time is here's how it can help you. It'll save you time.
Yes.
Okay. It'll just save you time. So I do a
Hmm.
lot of work with drug and alcohol rehabs, right?
Hmm.
That's a area of interest for me, and it's very personal to me. So I'm very, very focused on that particular community. And a bunch of my clients in the the addiction space and treatment space, they use the Enneagram as part of their intake for 30-day, or in treatment clients. And the reason is it saves them time.
Yeah.
Like you just have some insights. You've only got 30 to 90 days with these people, right?
Hmm.
Usually 28 to 90 days typically.
Yeah.
Um, and because of that, the clock's ticking, and the more you can get up front about people,
Hmm.
the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
and they love the Enneagram
Oh,
because,
yeah.
it's so helpful with
Mhm.
it just gives just gives you an added step up on what's happening with your clients.
Totally. And I would also like to add for clinicians that in addition to giving us insight into some important things about our clients that could be very relevant to the work we're trying to do, I think it also is a quick way to help provide clients with insight into
Yes,
themselves that can
absolutely.
sometimes take a long time to happen in therapy, particularly if we're being slow, and that also, is sometimes dependent on building the type of relationship with a client that allows them to be able to accept feedback from us, that can be, it can feel threatening, as opposed to understanding the dimension of personality, that this is who they are. There's a spectrum, and visibility again into like some of that, not just the strengths, but the growth opportunities, the problematic insights, aspects, like that can take such a long time to work towards
Yes.
in therapy, and to have a report that somebody is like, yeah, I do that. That's, oh my gosh, we might have just saved several months in
Yes.
unfolding that. So now, can I, though, ask you a question about one of the other sides of this? And this actually came from a listener. Sometimes prior to recording podcasts, I like to put little messages out onto the internet to be like, hey, team, I'm talking to Ian Morgan Cron next week on the podcast. What questions do you have? And one came back that I was like, oh, this is so interesting. Can I just pose it to you? Because
Absolutely.
I think that there can also be a risk, not just with Enneagrams, like with anything, where people can sort of box others in, stereotype, pigeonhole, whatever you want to call it. And there's this like narrow thinking. So the question is, for those of us using the Enneagram to improve our relationships, friendships, business relationships, romantic, how do we walk the fine line between acknowledging and respecting someone's type, right? Like this is who you are, versus um, seeing and encouraging their capacity for growth, evolution, the multidimensionality of it. So it's like, how do we avoid boxing people in and making space for them to be different, but also like honoring the reality of maybe what could be their core personality? Because that's probably not going to change. I mean, it's not going to change. So can you speak to that at all, the duality, respect versus
Yeah. Well,
growth?
one of the things I
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes say is it's a a pithy saying, but I oftentimes just say, listen, the Enneagram doesn't put you in a box. It tells you
Mm-hmm.
about the box you're already in and how to get out of it. And just how to
I
get
know.
out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we all do have these repeating patterns of, self-limiting behaviors that, may have made sense as little people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now no longer serve us as adults,
Right.
right? And they helped us navigate the new world of relationships in which we found ourselves. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But now they do precisely the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing I'd say is, your personality, and this is where I get a little suspicious of certain models, like, is not static. Human beings are not things, they're processes.
Right.
Like they are dynamic. They are
Mm-hmm.
they're ever evolving. Who I was
Yeah.
30 minutes ago is different from who I am now.
Yeah. That's
As one therapist friend of mine said, if your wife goes to work in the morning, a stranger comes home at 5. There's 9 hours of life that have passed when you have
that's a
not been
good
with them.
point. That's a nice saying. Hmm.
So again, I sort of approach these things with a sort of philosophical sort of, humility about
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the worst thing in the world, I think, well, not the worst thing, but a very unhelpful thing, a very
Mm-hmm.
unskillful thing, is when we say to somebody, well, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. This is just what we do. You have to deal with it.
Right. Accept
And I'm
me as
like,
I am.
that actually just tells me that someone's in deep resistance to the work they have to do.
Right.
And that's, you know, not a positive, not a positive indication.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so I'm always telling people, listen, the Enneagram reveals to you the work that you have to do. It will reveal. I have another therapist friend who says, if you're looking for flattery, don't play with the Enneagram. I mean, the Enneagram is not only going to tell you what's best about you, it's going to tell you what's not so great about you.
Yeah.
And,
I love
you
it.
know, yeah. And so it does also, or in every instance, it actually lays out a introductory growth path for
Mm-hmm.
each type, right? So
Yes.
you're an Enneagram 7, the enthusiast. It's a wonderful type, right? But or not but
And also
and
problematic, Ian. I mean,
and when it's not, when it's lacking, when a person who is an Enneagram 7 lacks self-awareness and is not doing their work,
Mm-hmm.
they, like every other type, begin to bang guardrail to guardrail through other people's lives,
Yeah.
right? Now, part of the journey for you is being able to face painful patterns of feeling and thinking, um, and integrating them into your life in
Mm-hmm.
such a way that it creates more depth and of character and of personhood. And oftentimes, sevens are very averse to those types of feelings and patterns of thinking, and they have a very elaborate set of strategies for avoiding it. And so, you know, again, right away, the Enneagram says, all right, Enneagram. So here's, like, I give an example of this. When I have an Enneagram 7 in my office sometimes, who's not very
Uh-huh.
self-aware. So on the continuum of personality, we might say high self-awareness, moderate self-awareness, low self-awareness, right?
Uh-huh.
Some
Sure.
will call it integration, moderate integration, and disintegration, depending on the teacher or the
Mm-hmm.
school of Enneagram. Uh, and so this young guy comes into my office, and this is so typical of sevens. I said to him, I said, so, you know, we're just getting to know each other. And he said, well, you know, I had a really great childhood, and, you know, my parents were wonderful, and school was great, and, you know, everything was just
Yeah.
sunny, 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 sunny,
Yeah.
sunny.
You're like,
And
why are we here,
I'm
dude?
listening. Yeah, really, why are we here, dude? And then he goes, and, you know, and then, you know, during the summers, I'd go spend time with my uncle. Like the summer that my brother was killed in an accident, I went, whoa, 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 back up. Big smile on his face, big smile on
Uh-huh.
his face,
Oh
right?
my
And
gosh. Right, right.
it's his twin brother,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
right? And he's just going right by it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I said, tell me more about that. He goes, well, it was really, you know, it was hard, but you know what it did? It really brought us together as a family. So right away, he's reframing it.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking this very negative situation and turning it upside down so he can
Yeah.
avoid feeling what the rest of us would feel were our twin brother to have been killed at
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
10 years old or 11 years old.
Right.
So again, you know, what you see there is, you know, just insight into a personality. And then I'm able to work with that client. They know their
Mm-hmm.
Enneagram type. And I'm able to say to them, listen, man, you know, I'm just wondering if this trauma has been resolved for you. If actually it's been given the attention and
Mm-hmm.
um, or whether or not you just sort of skated over the surface of it in service to not,
Right.
because you're afraid that in those places, in those dark spaces of grief and sadness
Mm-hmm.
and loss, that you're unsupported.
I hear that. No, and that's so true. I mean, just personal share. That's actually one of the things about like reading through your report with Enneagrams and of course your book, The Road Back to You, which I read cover to cover, loved it. But you know, this piece. So I lost my mom at the beginning
Mm.
of the pandemic, 2020. And certainly went through a period of months where I was like very much in the dark emotions and also grieving very intentionally and purposefully because I know that I can do that pivot thing, right? And go immediately into the light sides of it. Like my mom was an incredibly spiritual person. She's an angel now, an actual angel, and like kind of moving into that way of thinking about it, which feels great, honestly, without like really holding myself in that space of, no, I also
Yes.
need to really grieve
Yeah.
this. And like my sister processed it in a different way because she doesn't have that orientation. So I'm
Right.
like, mom is with you all the time. And she's like, I'm devastated. That creates a split in relationships that can be not good for people. And so, and I don't want to turn this into being about me, but just, the to your point, the validity and also the usefulness of how we can start a conversation with people about these darker aspects, or I hate to use the word problematic, but aspects of personality that we need to be mindful of, because if we're not, they can create real problems. It's a powerful tool. It really is. Yeah.
Well, as Jung would have said, right? Like, we need to make the unconscious conscious.
Right.
Obviously, this is obvious to your listeners, right? And the more we can bring material that is under the waterline of awareness into awareness, the better our clients are prepared for change and transformation.
Yeah.
And the Enneagram does a really good job of surfacing unconscious motivations, drives, fears, and helps the client go, oh, that's why. Oh, that's why. But it's not enough just to have that information, because information is not transformation.
Exactly.
Right? So it also then says, so now that we know this, here's the next step. I have to now sit in this grief because that is what this situation requires of me. Right? And whereas a 4, like me on the Enneagram,
I was wondering what your number was. I was waiting for the opportunity to ask.
So for me, as a 4 on the Enneagram, I could get lost for too long in the grief and begin to organize my identity around that suffering as to give evidence of my specialness and uniqueness. So that's very different from a 7. And so I actually at times need to be told, Ian, other people suffer too, not just you. And this is normal, but it's also normal to integrate this experience and move on to what's next at the appropriate time. But you can't, like when my mom died about a year and a half ago.
Oh,
And
that's
I
pretty
was
fresh.
Yeah, she was 95 and a pistol to the end. We always laugh. We used to say my mom could smoke in a hospital and no one would stop her. She was an 8. She was a strong 8 on the Enneagram.
All right.
And a challenger. And I could see there were times when I was kind of being trapped in this space of melancholy and bittersweetness, which is it's like what Victor Hugo said. He said, melancholy is the happiness of being sad. And I was getting lost in that and this idealized picture of the past with my mom. And after a while, because I know the Enneagram, because I've done enough work, I was able to say, it's time to say goodbye now. It's time to let go. And it's time to move on from this kind of reverie that is so typical of my type. Right. So I was able to step back from my experience using the knowledge I know of my Enneagram type, observe it, and make different decisions now. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I have some choices here. And if it hadn't been for the Enneagram, I would not have spotted that. And I may have been trapped in a behavior that was really unskillful.
Well, and friends, that's how it's done. That is what makes the Enneagram so useful. And Ian, I know we're probably about out of time. We'll pause. Do you need to take care of something?
No. I was just making sure my phone was off.
Oh, all good.
Sorry about that.
Well, while we're taking a quick pause here, I was just going to roll into a question related to how therapists could learn more. Is there anything else that you would like me to ask you about, though, before we start to wrap things up?
No, I think it's been a good conversation. I don't know. Have
Okay.
you thought it was helpful?
Oh no, I think it's been really great, and I appreciate just the authenticity of the last few minutes. I thought that. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
No
that's
problem.
good.
No problem.
Um, so to glide to a stop here. So in terms of real world application, I'd love to talk a little bit about how a licensed therapist listening to this and thinking, you know what, I this would be a beneficial tool for me to use. Can you talk a little bit more about how they might integrate this into their work? Maybe a little bit more about your platform, recommendations for broaching this with clients, what they can expect in terms of the report that they might receive, just, how they would use this. And then, of course, where.
Yeah, of course. So, well, it depends on context, right? Like I was
Hmm.
mentioning, for example, in rehabs, people are
Yeah.
using it as part of intake. I think with a therapist who's also working in the coaching space, maybe in the corporate zone, right? I
Mm-hmm.
use it constantly.
It's standard issue in that
Yeah.
realm,
And can I just,
honestly.
oh
Yes.
my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
And helpful. It is
So helpful.
crazy helpful.
Totally.
So I spent a lot of time in boardrooms and in, working with companies to build trust, for retention, employee retention,
Mm-hmm.
all
Mm-hmm.
the stuff that's fairly typical. And the Enneagram is like, they just look at me like I invented fire. And I have to tell them I didn't invent it, but thank you.
Right.
But
Or should be
um,
anyway.
yeah, I wish it was mine, but it's not. And
Hmm.
so I just part of it is I don't I'm pretty good at using it all the time with clients.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I assess whether or not at what point in our work together will it make sense for me to use the
Hmm.
Enneagram, right?
Yeah.
And usually it's fairly early on, but it just depends on
Hmm.
the circumstances, right? Um, and again, that's just part of just being a good discerning clinician, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the assessment itself not only identifies core type, but many other pieces to it.
Hmm.
I always tell clinicians, it's not enough just to use the test. You really need to read up on the Enneagram so that you are
Yes.
very, very familiar with the system and how it works. The
Hmm.
Enneagram is simple to learn. It's very difficult to master. I had already been
Well,
through.
mhm.
Go ahead.
Oh,
You're going to
go
ask a
ahead.
question.
Oh, no, no, no. You had already been through groups. Is that what you were going to say?
No, I was going to say I'd already been through, graduate school, and it took me years before I could honestly say to myself with any integrity, I really understand this system now. Like I had to do a ton of reading, a ton of thinking, research. Now, it's immediately useful, but to
Hmm.
really get all the juice out of it requires that a clinician really do their work with it.
Well, and so let's talk about that, because I mean that is who we are talking to right now, are clinicians who are like, yeah, because they will do the work to make sure that they're using this tool reliably, responsibly. What would you advise a clinician to do? Is there material on your website, for example, or books that would help them truly understand what it is that they're working with and how to
Yeah.
apply that?
There's a couple of books I might recommend. One is if you're looking for a good primer, mine is honestly, that's what it was written for. The Road Back to You is not a deeply clinical
Oh,
book.
I
It's
have it right
not
here.
five, right there it is.
Road
It's
back to
not
you.
five, it's not a 500-page tome. There's plenty of those out there on the Enneagram, and
Hmm.
some of them are content rich, but this was really designed for a layperson who was trying to find more self-understanding.
Yeah. And even like
Um,
just as an aside, bibliotherapy with clients to
mm,
refer them to this book in addition to the report, I could see
yes,
being very useful. Hmm.
yes, it is. So
Yeah.
that's a great primer, and it's something your client could read and understand.
Hmm.
It doesn't have a lot of, thick psychological nomenclature and, language. I like Beatrice Chestnut's book, The Complete Enneagram.
Hmm.
I think that's a really good book, but again, that's going to be a 500-page, more of a tome,
Hmm. Yeah.
than anything else. I do think that a book like some people like Dr. David Daniels was a psychiatrist, I think psychiatrist at Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
who did a lot of work with the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
And his work, you mentioned Riso and Hudson. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
didn't have much luck with their
No, it's
assessment.
fine. It wasn't as reliable or valid as yours.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, those are a couple of works that I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think that's um, maybe a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, with anything in life, there are reliable sources and there are not reliable sources.
Yeah.
With the internet being what it is, things can be um, a little,
Yeah.
there are always practitioners out there. I don't care if it's with attachment theory, IFS, doesn't matter, that are just not great at what they do.
Well,
And they maybe,
and very confident, very strong opinions.
oh,
And it's,
oh, yes. Yeah,
hard to
yeah,
sort
yeah.
through that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
And by
sure.
the way, David Daniels was at Stanford. He was a
Hmm.
psychiatrist,
Nice.
and a pioneer of the Enneagram as well.
Hmm.
Um, so all to say, I just want your therapist to know there are a lot of really reliable people out there using the Enneagram,
Yeah.
including yourself, and that find it to be tremendously helpful and a really, really great resource. And, you know, um, I oftentimes with the client will say, okay, you've taken the test. We determined that the test has determined that you're an Enneagram 5, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want you to go to my book and read the chapter on fives. And then I
Mm-hmm.
want you to go to Beatrice's book and read the chapter on fives. And then we're going to talk about what you've learned, what you've discovered. Now, let's just say the client comes back and says, I don't really identify with everything around the five. And I'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, you don't have to meet all the criteria
Right.
for a particular type to be that type. I'm always like,
Mm-hmm.
75%, that's chances are you're that type. The other
Right.
thing, remember, for your clinicians to know is that this is not a trait-based deal here, right? So, um, you have traits of all 9 types. I oftentimes tell people, think of your interior world as having 9. It's like a 9-room house,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, there's always one room in the house that you camp out in more than the other 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there are rooms in my house I probably go into like never. You know what I mean? Like, the bathroom in my kid's
Mm-hmm.
bedroom that don't live here anymore, right? I just don't even go
Mm-hmm.
into that bedroom anymore. And but there is one room I always go to. I just naturally gravitate toward. I always tell people that's like your type, right? That's the
Yeah.
room you camp out in more than others. But you have traits and features of all 9 types, right?
Yeah.
But there's just one that sounds more like you than all the
Yeah.
others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, if I really feel like there's a problem, like maybe there was an error problem in the test, that could be also that the client was under a great deal of stress, and now they're
Mm.
coming out as their stress number
Yeah.
on the test,
Mm-hmm.
or they have such what we call a strong wing, which are the 2 numbers
Mm-hmm.
adjacent to that type, that it becomes very difficult to discern. This is all the reason why a clinician needs to do their own work
Yeah.
understanding the system, so that they can spot, well, maybe why that test didn't quite
Absolutely.
nail it.
Yeah. And on that note, I will share that I do think that some of these tests can return results because they are picking up the existence of mental health symptoms. So, for example, somebody with clinically significant levels of depression may
Yes.
kind of come up higher as a 4. Someone who is a trauma survivor may have like come back as a 6 because of the
Yeah.
anxiety, the hypervigilance, and so that there needs to
Yeah.
really be, to your point earlier, Ian, this is one tool that we are using responsibly with
Yes.
a lot of other dimensions and factors that we're
Right.
considering, because it
Yeah.
can obscure personality depending on what is going on for somebody in the
Yeah.
moment.
And
Hmm.
guess what? That's why people pay us. Right?
Yeah.
Like, in other words, we have a kind of expertise. And
Hmm.
so, for example, yes, 6s are probably known as the most anxious number on the Enneagram. And but just because someone's anxious doesn't make them a 6. Right. Like,
Correct.
there are ones on the Enneagram who can have a generalized anxiety disorder, and it'd be a big mistake but they're a 1 with a generalized anxiety disorder. They're not a 6. Right. And that's
Right.
why people have to trust us to be able to discern, and really parse what's going on in a
Yeah.
responsible and judicious way. And, you know, but again, the Enneagram is a really cool, efficient is maybe the word I'd use, way of getting to information that would otherwise take us months to get our hands
Definitely.
on.
Thank you so much for going into all of this and explaining this assessment and also just this model so beautifully for us. I just think that this is so helpful. And so for clinicians who are like, I'm ready to learn, to start exploring your test, maybe taking it themselves, tell us a little bit
Yeah.
more about where they can find you. And I believe you also
Hmm.
have a podcast where you're talking about
I do.
things related
Yeah.
to Enneagram.
Yep. So we have, if you go to my website, Ian Morgan Cron, CRON.com, you'll see a button or a tab for assessment, and people can access my assessment there. And oftentimes with coaches and clinicians who do a lot of testing, they can contact me through the website, and you can get discounted orders on sort of bulk orders, and have
Amazing.
a dedicated link. And there's the price point is lower. Now, in terms of the podcast, yeah, it's called Typology. And one of the things that Typology now has probably 23 million downloads.
Amazing.
So it's been
Congrats.
it's had a nice run. But on it, I interview people of different types, and hear directly from them about their experience of their personality style, so that in service to others understanding better what these different types are like.
Amazing. But I could see how that gives more visibility into the lived experience
Yeah,
of this. Yeah.
yeah, precisely.
What a great resource. All right. Well, Ian, thank you again so much for your time today. I am so excited about your typology assessment, and I hope that our listeners are excited about it as well. Ian's book on Enneagrams, The Road Back to You, an Enneagram Journey to Self-Discovery. You shared so many resources. We have the typology podcast. I'll be linking to Dr. Todd Hall's paper that goes into some of the research. And also, you guys will include the links to the books that Ian so graciously mentioned during our time
Yeah,
together.
and we should add on Dan Siegel's book
And Dan Siegel's book,
about
all
the
the things.
Enneagram and interpersonal neurobiology.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay, well, thank you so much. And a pleasure speaking with you. I hope we have the opportunity to visit again soon. This was fun.
Me too, Lisa. Thank you.